So we really are here to make 3 points. And the first one is that we don't believe, Republicans, our caucus does not believe that we ought to rush into a Rules Committee hearing tomorrow and vote on this project. And one reason for that is that there is a hearing scheduled next week in the court over the lawsuit that was filed by former Representative Jim Alba questioning the constitutionality of the process by which this project was enacted. And we think it is prudent to allow the court to at least have the opportunity to weigh in on this before we act. I think it would be irresponsible for us to get a project going that may be in jeopardy. And if that were to happen, if the court were to say that we don't think this is appropriate, we've already initiated it, that could present some difficulty. Secondly, we also want to make the point that there will be no Republicans who will vote for this project in the Rules Committee. Last year, as this was being enacted, it came up as an amendment in the Tax Committee. I believe it was Senator Ortman at that time who made a motion to take it out, failed, came to the floor as part of the tax bill, and of course did not support the tax bill, and there was also an amendment that was offered by Republicans to take this project out of the tax bill. And the argument, of course, is that, set aside the merits of the building, whether we should have it or not, the process by which this is done should not be in a tax bill. And that's really the question that Representative Knobloch is raising in his lawsuit. That amendment to take it out of the tax bill last year was supported 100% by members of our caucus and supported 100% by members of the DFL. So what we're really doing, and the argument has been that we need to do this to sort of keep this capital restoration project going, to allow for there to be space for senators to have offices, and of course this, but what it seems to me is that we're making a 100-year decision to solve a 2-year problem. And that, does, to me and to us, doesn't seem to be responsible. So third, let me just again reiterate the concerns that we have. This is an unnecessary project. We believe that the Capitol has been the offices for at least the majority, and before that all of the Senate, ever since the beginning of the building's purpose. And there's no need to set that aside and say let's build this $90 million some would call it ostentatious building across the street. Secondly, this was done without any public input. The process is flawed. There was no hearing, there was no bill, there was no opportunity for the public to come and weigh in and talk about the merits of this building or whether in terms of the other priorities that we face this should be a priority. So this did not go through the normally expected process. We also think, as I said, that we should wait for this lawsuit to see if there is any merit to what is being brought. I think another point that needs to be talked about is that there is no clear understanding of what the financing is. There's no long-term commitment. There's no bonding. Typically when you build a building, you pass the bonds, you have an assured stream of revenue that will pay for this. It is not clear to us. We have asked the questions. How is this building going to get paid? And it seems to me what it sounds like, and I don't know, but it sounds like what we're saying is that we're going to rely on future legislatures to appropriate the funds necessary on a sort of pay-as-you-go process. Well, we all know you cannot bind a future legislature to do anything, and it seems to me this is a very highly speculative and risky form of financing a significant capital project. I think, again, in our opinion, this whole thing could be characterized fairly as a boondoggle. You look at the project, you look at how it's designed, you look at the manner in which it's being designed, you look at the purpose for which it's as hard to escape that this is being done without public input, to satisfy the interests of the members of the legislature. And that's just really not what we should do. So our view is this reflects some of the misplaced priorities that the governor and the DFL majorities have. The project costs $90 million. There's been an effort recently in the last several months since the end of last session to look at financing some pay increase, a much needed pay increase for long-term care workers, 5%. That's about $87 million. It seems to us, and I think to members of the public would agree, that would be a far better use of public resources than building this palatial Crystal Palace across the street.
Criticism of this is the process, or the lack of the process. I sit on the bonding committee, I sit on the finance committee, and I will tell you that neither committee heard this matter. There isn't a standalone bill on it. This literally came out of nowhere. And I think that we as legislators and the media and the public, we have a right to know what's going on. And the process that was involved in this parking ramp in this legislative building literally stinks. It came out of like a smoke-filled backroom deal. And I could not be more critical of those who have brought this forward in the manner that they did. This should have been open, an open and public process where we had a right to ask questions.
Yeah, thank you. I too would feel the same as Senator Newman, sitting on the bonding committee and finance committee with him, and also doing traveling with Senator Stump over the last 2.5 months of looking at projects that were way less expenditures than this very large expenditure going on here, and not one hearing. Not one hearing in the bonding committee, not one hearing in the finance committee. You know, the public out there thinks that bills come forward that we don't read before we vote on. Well, quite frankly, there was nothing here. There was nothing here until the last minute to vote on. So when they lead with that kind of a perception of what goes on down here in St. Paul and Washington, D.C., there's a reason why. And the big question has to be asked of the DFL why they decided to do this in the last waning hours without any public input. I think it was shameful.